What's up guys, Hox here from vgmontage.com, and today I'm going to be showing you how to create something that will hopefully look a little bit like this.
Double kill, flag taken, triple kill, extermination.
It's a fairly easy effect to create. It's just a little bit of basic masking, some little tricks, color corrections and shadowing, drop shadow, stuff like that. Alright, so we'll go over to our new composition here, and we've got our clip, which is basically just a simple tracking shot. Player moves from right to left. So the first thing I'm going to do is get the general composition set up. So I put the text and the extermination medal in the general area they're going to be when we're finished, just so I get a feel of how the whole thing's going to look at the end. So I'm going to go new text, extermination. Now I want this text to sit behind him, just around about there is pretty good, I think. And we'll also grab this extermination medal and we're going to drop this in. Hit the S button to bring up our scale and scale that bad boy down. That's going to sit, maybe scale it up to about 50%. Yeah, that looks actually no, maybe scale it down just a little bit more, so we can put it just there. Alright, so now we've got that there, what we're going to do is we're going to select our clip, the bottom layer here, our video clip. I'm going to hit Control D to duplicate it, and then we're going to drag that up on top of the other two layers, so we'll hide those two layers. Now we can just zoom in using the scroll wheel on your mouse to zoom in and out, and then we will select the pen tool. So basically what the pen tool does is it allows you to draw a mask, and what a mask basically is it allows you to draw a shape, or it allows you to select an area and it will hide everything else, so that only the area you've selected is visible. So for example, if I make a mask that looks like that and I hide this bottom layer, you'll see that the shape that I made, it actually cuts that out and everything else gets removed. Now what we can do with this effect is we can make it look like things that we've added in post. For example, this medal and this text, we can make it look like it was actually part of the original scene. We make it look like it's in the world. So let's go ahead and undo that mask we made. So for the first mask we're going to make, we're just going to go around the hard edges of our Spartan. We're not going to pay any attention to this smoke here. We're going to handle that a bit later. So just get your pen tool and then just click. If you drag, it'll make it a Bezier curve, which means you can get nice rounded edges. Or if you just click once, it'll create hard curves. It'll create just normal points, which give you hard angles. Now, making these takes a little bit of time, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to delete that layer and actually have one here that I made earlier. So this mask is not too bad. You'll notice it is very rough over here. That's because I knew that there wasn't going to be anything behind this area here, and I did that especially because I really didn't want to have to go around all that at the sniper rifle. I'd much rather cut out these edges here, which are pretty straight and pretty easy to do. That's a pretty big thing, is to think through each of your shots and work out what's the easiest way to do it. You don't want to waste your time cutting through all this crap here. So now we're going to drag this clip back to the top so that it actually goes in front of, well, we make it visible first, and you'll see now that it actually looks like this character, because of this mask, looks like it's in front of him. You'll also notice that this actually has two masks. So there's this first mask that I was kind of doing again before, and there's also a small little mask in here. Now, by default, when you add a mask, I'm just going to click on the clip and hit M to bring up the masks. By default, when you add a mask, this option here is set to add, and what that does is basically says that you want to add whatever's inside this mask to the picture, but that's not what we want to do in this case. For this little mask here, we want to subtract, because we want to get rid of that background between his legs there. So you'll notice that it looks pretty good down here. The text looks like it's behind him, but up here, the smoke doesn't go in front of it, and it gets cut off, and it just doesn't look very good up here. And so what we're going to do is we're going to select this layer. We're just going to hide these for a moment so we can see where our smoke is properly. Select the pen tool again, and we are going to make just a rough mask around this smoke. Now for the smoke, I want to go, like, if we imagine the boundaries of the smoke would be about here. There's no real smoke on this side, but there's a little bit of smoke here. So the smoke actually ends around about here, I'd say. We don't want to put the mask there because of what we're going to do later. If we put it there, it's not going to look right. We want to give a few pixels of smoke either side of our mask. And the reason we want to do that is so that when we feather it here, so this is the mask we just created, mask 3. We're going to select this mask feather option, and we're going to bump that up to probably 40 pixels or so. And you won't see an effect at the moment because we don't actually have anything behind it to tell, but once we put this in, you will see straight away what that looks like. So that looks much better. If I put this back to 0, you'll see the difference of what the mask feather actually does. So this line here is very sharp. It's quite hard, and for the smoke it doesn't really work because the smoke is a little bit transparent. You can see the background a little bit. So by feathering it, what it does is it actually makes it a little bit transparent and lets you see that extermination symbol a little bit in the background. You know, we can move this around however we want it. This text too, just move that a little bit. Alright, so that's our masking done. We've got our 3 masks there. And so the next step is to, well, you might notice if you start scrubbing through your timeline here, you'll notice that the masks here, they don't really move. They stay in the same position. And I mean, if you like shit things, if you like things that look bad, then maybe you want to do it like this, but probably for this tutorial we're going to animate that mask so it looks just a little bit better. Back to that idea of keeping it simple. I chose this simple panning shot because I knew that when I came to masking it, to actually keep the mask on the character, I wouldn't really have to do a lot. In fact, I'll show you right now. What we'll do is we'll just hit P, we'll just hit M, and we'll expand these, and we'll see these mask paths are already set to animate. So you'll notice there is a keyframe here, and these stopwatches are ticked. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select this this stopwatch here to turn animating on this mask as well. So make sure that all 3 of these stopwatches are ticked for mask path, and you'll see that 3 keyframes are created here on our timeline. Now all you need to do is go to the end of the timeline, double click on one of these points of the mask, and it should select all of the points. If you hold shift then, what we're going to do instead of doing that, we're just going to hold shift on all these three. So make sure all the masks are selected and then double click on it. Then what happens is it'll move them all at once. Now you'll notice that this mask actually works quite well. There are a few small areas that need changing, but in general it's pretty good. It's a pretty good track. So it's a pretty simple move, so it works quite well. And if I just zoom out a little bit, you'll see what I mean. So now when this mask, when it moves, it looks like that text is actually behind that character. It gives that kind of illusion. And in reality, all that is it's one top layer that looks like that, and a bottom layer which is just normal. So this top layer, then, that character looks like he's in front. Looks like he's in front of the text. Okay, so we got that mask, all the masking set up right. It looks like the text is stuck behind it. The only problem is the text is moving. We want it to look like it's actually attached to the ground there. We want to look like it's sitting on the ground in this scene. So the way we're going to do that is we're going to come down here, we'll right click and go new null object, and we're going to use this null object like a little tracking, like a little tracker. Basically what we want to do is we want to move this down here, and we're going to set this left corner, because this is the point, this is where the position point is on this null. We're going to set it to right on this kind of T section here between the two lines. And if we move that up just a little bit, try and keep it right there. Alright, now I've made a mistake, because what we actually want to do is we want to do that, but we want to do it at the first frame of the thing. But that's not too bad, because the shot only moves horizontally, so it should stay, it's on the right plane there still. We just need to move it across a little bit so it matches up with this T again. Alright, so now that we've got it set up on our first frame, and we've got in the position we want, we're going to select the layer and hit P to bring up the position, and then we're going to hit the stopwatch here to animate it, and then we're going to move all the way to the end of our clip, and then move that null object. Now we're going to hold shift because there's no moving up and down, so we're just going to lock it horizontally, and then we're going to move it until this top corner again lines up with that T. So now that should look like that null object is stuck to the floor there, and it's pretty good, I think. So now what we're going to do to make the text look like it's sitting on the floor as well, we're going to select it and the extermination symbol, and then we're going to grab this pick whip. We're going to grab this thing here, which is called a pick whip. What this does is it allows us to link objects, layers to other layers, and what that does is it basically means that the position is controlled by this null object as well. So if I move this null, you'll see that it also moves, like if I change the position, it also changes the position of those two layers because they're linked. And what this does is it gives us the impression that the text is actually stuck to the floor, just like that null object is. So that looks pretty good. What we're going to do now is just a few little things to just make it look a little bit more realistic. This white color especially it's pretty unrealistic. Nothing really looks like that. It's too bright, it's too clean. You need to add a little bit of well, what I like to do is put a ramp in there. So go effect, generate ramp, and what that does is it just creates a gradient, like a color gradient. So you can grab basically between this point and this point is where the gradient goes. So if we just move this point down a little bit and move this one up, it'll just compress it a little bit. Now I actually want the dark color to be on the bottom, and I want it to be a little bit blue. In fact, what I might even do is I'm going to sample this color here, which is a good way to do it, to make sure everything blends in and fits with your color of your shot well. It's a good thing to actually take colors from the scene, and we need something lighter for the top here. Maybe this over here. Might just manually make it a little bit lighter because we want to keep it looking kind of white. Let's move this up a bit. That looks pretty good for the coloring. So the next thing to do is we're going to make this a 3D layer by clicking this little square in here, which brings up this cube. And why I want it to be a 3D layer is we want to actually rotate it towards the camera. We want to make it look like it's sitting at an angle a little bit, just to give it a bit more depth. And if we hit R, on that layer, we'll bring up the rotation tools. We grab this one here, scale it up just a little bit to say 15 degrees. That looks pretty good. Now I might change those colors a little bit because blending in with our background probably a little bit too much. I think something like that looks a bit better. It stands out a bit more there. So next thing we're going to do is we're going to create the shadow for this text layer here, and that's pretty easy to do. All we need to do is duplicate this layer, and then we're going to delete this ramp because we don't want it to be that color. Instead, what we want to do is we want to make it black. So if we click here, make sure this fill color is selected, not the stroke, and then the text will change to black. So shadows are quite blurry, so we're going to add a quick let's add a lens blur. And what we can do now we're going to select the rotation tool. We're going to select this x-axis here, and we're just going to rotate it down until it looks like it's kind of sitting on the ground there. And that's it. Pretty much all we need to do, and that looks pretty good. I think that works quite well. Now the last thing we need to do is we need to do a little bit of color correction on this thing, because you'll notice that all the colors here are quite dark, whereas this is very bright and it doesn't really fit in properly. So we're going to do that by going Effect, Color Correction, Curves, and then what we'll do is we will just bring these blacks down a bit. Let's make it nice and dark. I also want these whites to be darkened just a little bit, not too much. Just take a little bit of the shine out of it, and let's make this a little bit of an S curve. Now you can play around with this, as much as you'd like, just to get it looking the way you want. I mean, it's really up to you on how you want it to look, but that looks pretty good. And that is it. So, oh yeah, sorry, one thing I did want to add. If you zoom in here to 100%, you'll see that this edge here is very sharp on the mask. So if we select this top clip layer again, where our masks are, you'll see that the edges here on this first mask we created, they're quite sharp, but in reality everything else, because of the resolution we captured at, a lot of the edges and stuff are a bit blurred. So what we're going to do is we're going to actually feather this mask just a little bit. If you look at the second mask we created, which is, oh sorry, not the second one, if you look at the third mask, which is the mask we did here for the smoke, remember we feathered that one at 30 pixels, which is quite a lot. For this first mask, all we want to do is we want to feather it maybe 1 pixel, just to give it a little bit of a blur here, make it look like that text is actually behind him. So that is it. I hope you guys learned something today. If you guys use this in a montage, I'd definitely like to see it, so you can put it as a reply to this video if you're watching on YouTube, or you can send it to me. If you guys want to see more tutorials like this, subscribe to this channel. Otherwise, you can check out my website, vgmontage.com. Once again, this is Hox, and thank you for watching.
Triple kill. Extermination.